Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we have an early impression video on a Nishane, which is a house that I've probably got 5, 6, 7 reviews on. I'm not sure exactly, but I have done some work on the house and more to come. There's some Nishanes that I have some full bottles of that I will hope to be reviewing very soon. But today we're going to talk about a Nishane that I only have a sample of, and I had a chance to wear this to bed once previously. Now I'm wearing it as my scent of the day. So I figure, these type of videos are good because they at least give my thoughts on a scent, which otherwise I don't have in the collection and you would never hear me talk about. So this is Nishane's B-612. So you can see it's an extrait de parfum. It was originally released in 2018. Interestingly enough, they put this in what they call the Imaginative collection, which, the front label of this has asteroids, and which we'll talk about why later on, and moons and stars and stuff like that. The perfumer is Christian Carbonell, aka Chris Maurice. But the thing is, it's a very traditional scent. There's not very much imagination that goes into it, but we'll talk a little bit about that. But first, I want to do a very quick unboxing and show you guys what one of my sort of perfume god people, if you will, decided to send my way. His name is Jeff, and I just wanted to kind of give him a shout out. I've been chatting with him on Instagram for the last 3-4 weeks or so, and he sent this my way very kindly, and he asked that I shout out his Instagram channel, which I said I would be glad to. He's a really cool guy. His Instagram is My Scented World. So My Scented World, and kind of what makes him a little bit unique in the reviewer landscape is that he is both Mandarin and English speaking. So I think he plans to do reviews in both. So, the Chinese community can also appreciate some of these reviews. So let me at least show you guys the samples that he decided to send me, which is very, very kind of him. So we've got Aventus Absolute, which I've never smelled. Absolute Aventus, the flanker that got all that hype about triple aged, distilled, barreled, whatever the hell they were doing. And then we've got Tobacco Honey by Guerlain, which I also have yet to smell. I don't think I've smelled any of these. I think he went through and kind of said, hey, did you smell this? Did you smell this? I've never heard you talk about this, and just sent me some of the samples. Rouge Trafalgar by Christian Dior. Another niche that I have yet to smell. Vanille Plantifolia by Guerlain. Vanille Plantifolia Extrait 21. I think I remember this sample, or this sort of line that Guerlain did. I did not hear very good positive feedback on him. So one is called Tonka Serapia, and the Serapia, and the other's Bergamote Fantastico. Hell of a name. Extrait 11, Extrait 75 on the Serapia. I remember that the letters are supposed to mean something for each one. So, like, for example, I think the vanilla, it was maybe like 21 days that it needed to be, that it needed to sit in its distillation form, and that's why we got 21. I think Thierry Vasseur did an interview where he explain some of that. But anyways, very kind of you, Jeff. Thank you very much for sending that my way, and look forward to seeing the growth of your channel in the future. Okay, so let's get started, and let's talk about Nishane's B-612. So I've been wearing it as my scent of the day all day today. It's about 2:20 in the afternoon. I have worn it to bed once previously before, so I have some experience with it. And here's the thing. So 6 to 9 years ago or so, there started to be this trend in the niche world, all of a sudden, where these classical fougere fragrances started to get revived, right? So we saw it with things like Bracken Man by Amouage, which is probably, if you really twisted my arm, I think Bracken Man is, unfortunately, it is discontinued, by the way, but I do think that, you can see the fern right there on the front. And I think Bracken Man is probably my favorite of the niche fougères that were sort of revived all of a sudden, where they're paying homage to, this big blast from the past, this very traditional fougere build, So this was 2016. And then in 2018, we get B-612 by Nishane. So For those of you who don't know, a fougere is basically a fragrance category that means fern-like, or to smell like a fern. Well, the interesting part about that is that ferns have no smell for the most part. I mean, everyone argues that everything has a smell, but technically they don't have a smell in the same way as like a rose has a smell, you know? And so the concept by Ubigant, which originally made Fougere Royale in 1882. So Paul Parquet created Fougere Royale in 1882, and the whole concept with Fougere Royale is that it was supposed to be almost like giving a scent to a fern that has no smell. What would a fern smell like if the fern had a smell? That's kind of the idea. And so Paul Parquet very famously used this very newly synthesized ingredient called coumarin, and coumarin was first synthesized in 1868. So it took them 14 years or so. Before coming through with this breakthrough scent in 1882. I would love to smell the original Fougere Royale just to see, you know. I think I saw Sultan Pasha had a bottle one time in our interview that we did together, but that's on my, you know, never-ending vintage wish list things to smell, along with all the old Guerlains, Coeur de Russie, and all that crazy stuff I'll probably never get to smell. I have done an entire video on fougères, actually multiple videos, because I think one was ranked, one was unranked, the other one was focusing on aromatic fougères, the other one was like an amber fougere, which amber fougères really first started in the 70s with Pierre Cardin Pour Monsieur's kind of that starting point for me. There may have been some even going back to the 60s, but I'm going to say, let's say amber fougères really started to take off in the 70s and going through into the 80s with things like Guerlain's Heritage and stuff like that. And I absolutely love amber fougères. They're some of my favorite categories of all time because they add this sort of like warmth to the base. You get the lavender and you get the coumarin and the geranium and all the classical fougere structures, but the amber adds like an extra element, this warming element. And so B612, while it does have some aspects of the warmth of an amber fougere, it's not an amber fougere, and we'll talk about why as we go on with this review. But basically, it's going to lean much more to the traditional aromatic side of things. So you're going to get a lot more of these sort of spices, herbs. I almost get this rosemary note, even though it's not listed in here. And so the main point is if I can try to walk you through the scent, the very first thing that you have to understand is that even though this is a niche house, both of these fragrances we're discussing, and I'm going to review Bracken Man very soon. It's on the list. I was thinking when spring comes around, or at least when the warmer weather really starts. It's still technically January, and so it's cold here in Texas. But once it starts warming up, I want to do a full proper review on this. But even though these are niche houses, the thing that the starting point, if you will, before the gun even fires off and you go into the race, is that these are very traditional fougères. Okay, so it's not going to be some amazing, complex, niche, unbelievably crazy creation you've never smelled before. These will smell like a niche version of a very proper, traditional up and down fougere. That's the most important thing to kind of grasp with B612. And if you are a fiend for fougères, I mean, if you know and collect them, and there's other fougères that I would like to discuss on the channel, this is probably one of my all-time favorite fougères that, in the modern form anyways. If we go back to the vintage, you could bring out things like Sar and stuff like that. But Bon Monsieur by Rogue is an amazing classical aromatic fougere that you can still buy. If you want like a proper aromatic fougere without spending crazy money on something like Van Cleef & Arpels Sar, which is discontinued now. I did hear they brought it back in the niche collection, but I have no clue what it's going to be like. These type of fougères in the modern form are very important to at least get to experience what a proper aromatic fougere was. And so if you're a fiend for fougères, this fragrance, B612, is going to smell very fundamental to you. Very Tim Duncan. Fundamental, up and down. You get the lavender in the top, the geranium in the mid, the coumarin, tonka bean combination in the base. I guess technically Nishane shows the geranium here in the top of B612. And I think when you first spray, that classical combination of spicy geranium sort of hits you first. I think you get a lot of spices in the very beginning. Like as soon as the composition hits your skin, you're going to get lots of spices and herbs, and it's very uplifting. So technically the note listing is lavender in the top, cypress in the top, geranium in the top. So they do have geranium listed in the top. And then in the heart, you have cashmere wood, patchouli, sandalwood, cedarwood. That's in the heart. The base is musk, oak moss, and tonka bean. Okay, so it is sort of one of those very classical combinations, but that spicy geranium, I think one of the reasons they put it in the top, normally it's like lavender, geranium, tonka bean, or coumarin kind of in the base, but I think one of the reasons why you get that geranium in the top is the spiciness. Geranium can come across as a spicy type floral, and you get that very early on. You get sort of the freshness of it. That's kind of what makes it a fougere. It makes it very classical smelling as well. It's also mixed with that lavender, which comes across here as very calming, very soothing, slightly green, purple, floral-like smell, if you will. Slightly herbal combination, very traditional. Everything in this is very, very traditional smelling to me. Maybe you could make the case the lavender and cypress combination adds a little bit of woody twist to the fragrance before you get the sandalwood and the cedarwood later on in the composition. But it just sort of adds a little bit of that woodiness on top before it becomes even more woody as time goes on. And it really makes the fragrance feel like it's come directly out of nature, which is what I was saying in the beginning about a fougere fragrance being very fern-like, and obviously where are you going to find a fern? You're going to find it growing in nature. And that's one of the things that I think Nishane and Christian Carbonell did very well with B-612 is that they really created a fragrance that smells properly natural, like it belongs in nature. That's one of the aspects of the fragrance that I actually really, really like. It really does grow on you, that very natural, very delicate, natural, like there's a balance in nature. There's enough water for it to grow. There's enough sunlight. It just has that balance, B612 has that. And it's interesting because as we talk about the story of why they decided to name it this, which still blows my mind. I have no clue why they picked that, but there is a rose that one of the main antagonists in the story is taking care of, and obviously you have to water it and take care of it, all this stuff, and so that plays a part, I guess, as well. But if you can imagine this fern just being properly cultivated by nature, that is what the fragrance really does smell like, and it has this very herbal, almost slightly oily feel. That oiliness, I think, I would guess there's maybe some rosemary in here or something like that that's not listed. More herbs, something along those lines, and a very delicate type feeling. So the times that I have worn this, and again, it's only been twice to be fair, but between the time I wore it to bed and now this time as my scent of the day, I just think it's a very well done fougere. I think it doesn't seem like there's anything out of the ordinary. It doesn't seem like there's anything that's just going to completely blow you away, that you're going to be just so shocked to call this like a revolutionary fougere or anything like that, but it just does the job and it does it well. It's very fundamental. And I like how the coumarin in the base starts to add this extra feeling of like shaving cream, this professional, very creamy, professional-like feeling, great dad scent. If you're one of those people who want your children, like in my case, I don't really have a scent of like a signature scent where I wear it all the time. But if you are someone who has like a signature scent, you want your son or your daughter to like associate this smell with dad, B612 would be one of those fragrances that would work well, because great office scent. There's nothing really off-putting about it. There's nothing animalic about it. But on the other side of the coin, that makes it seem a little bit trite, boring, maybe just not thrilling. Like in History of the World when they show the Roman emperor the bathtub and he goes, nice, not thrilling, but nice. That's kind of what it feels like to me before he realizes he's taking a treasure bath. So the shaving community actually calls apparently like the thickness of the shaving cream lift, right? So I actually got some cream that you're supposed to kind of whip up yourself before you put it on, and it comes in this hard, like, it almost looks like a hard clay. You put it in there, add water, and mix it up, and depending on how good you are at actually mixing it, you can get a lot of lift from it. And if you can just imagine whipping up your own whipped cream and the shaving cream, just getting the right amount of lift, that thick, padded, like cushiony type smell. That's what the cream feels like in here. It feels very padded, very creamy, very thick, very shaving cream-esque. That obviously is, it adds that cushion. And it also adds that professional creaminess to it. And the fragrance does turn very creamy as time goes on. So along with all of these different notes in the top, you get this slight hint of cypress, all right? And cypress in B612, it's not very medicinal. So I've reviewed many fragrances on the channel that have this cypress note that they do feel very medicinal in aspect. So I've reviewed many where it really feels like it's almost like cleansing the air. The cypress here doesn't have that feeling at all. It just adds this little bit of fresh outdoor aspect, almost like it just feels like the scent fits perfectly in the outdoors. And I think the green cypress note plays a big part in that. And it is it's an interesting fragrance to analyze, because one of the things about it, I keep using the word natural, outdoor, this kind of thing. This is a fragrance from a brand that is known as doing the exact opposite of what I'm saying. So I've reviewed a couple fragrances on the channel where many folks in the community that I know and respect, they have given Nishane a very hard time, because let's say you take something like Fan Your Flames, or you take something like Sultan Vetiver, for example, which I absolutely love. But there's a big, giant dollop of amber woods in the base that some people just cannot put up with, right? And so from a house that gets really beat down about using these modern synthetic notes, to see something like this is the exact opposite. It's interesting, to say the least. Now, as we continue into the dry down, what ends up happening is more of sort of the musks and more of the cashmere woods start to come out, okay? You do get a little bit of oak moss as it dries down. Wouldn't be a proper fougere without at least a little hint of that textured oak moss, but what you really get as time goes on is this sort of warming feeling from the cashmere, and it's that warming quality. It is where I think it hints at being a little bit of an amber fougere. It's not an amber fougere, but it sort of hints that way. It never truly goes full amber fougere because there's no proper amber note. But what they've done is they decided to use cashmeran. Okay, now cashmeran adds this modern softness. Like, imagine like a fabric softener. Like, it makes your clothes feel even softer. That sort of like you're being hugged by your fabric or something. It has that sort of feeling to it, this softness. And that is maybe the most modern and revolutionary note in the fragrance, which this is where the wheels kind of fall off for me, because I like understanding the backstory. I like understanding how it all comes together. I like understanding why the sort of, creative director and the perfumer and all that stuff decided to do what they did. And so this is, maybe you couldn't say the wheels fall off, because I don't think that's fair, but maybe you could say where the story just doesn't match the scent to me. What I'm smelling is very traditional, hearkening back to the proper fougères of the past. And then when you read the blurb, so here, let me read you the blurb. So the creative directors, Mert Guzel and Marat Katran, first aimed to capture the aromas that they fantasize to suit the asteroid of the Little Prince, to make the wearers feel what it is like to be on your own asteroid. According to the novella, asteroid B612 was first discovered by a Turkish astronomer, and again, Nishane being a Turkish brand, and Nishane becomes the first perfume house to materialize the scent of the asteroid B612. B612 will make the wearer imaginative, open-minded, and aware of and sensitive to the mystery and beauty of the world, with its alluring structure bringing back the forgotten traits of childhood. So that's what's sort of written in there. They use words like enlightenment through exploration, all of this stuff, regain your instincts, remembering the inner child, all this stuff, because there's a book the asteroid B612 is basically like this fictional asteroid. It's funny because there actually is a real asteroid B612 that was not discovered by Turkish astronomers, but it was discovered by a Japanese astronomer. But in the book, the fictional novella, it is a Turkish astronomer that develops this, or at least discovers this asteroid. And this pilot flies off and goes to all these different asteroids. And one of the asteroids he goes to is asteroid B612. And he finds a little prince on this asteroid. And what's interesting is the little prince is doing things like caring for his rose and trying to control the baobab trees, apparently. And so it's interesting because you know, the little prince absolutely loves this rose that he's caring for. And there are some parts in the story, like, for example, the little prince is supposed to teach the pilot that what is essential is invisible to the eye. Or it's the time you spent on your rose that makes your rose so important. It's not necessarily the rose itself. It's the time you spent on the rose. And you become responsible forever for what you've tamed. Those were three of the most famous quotes from this little prince's experience on B612. And so it's interesting. You start thinking about asteroids and futuristic sense and all of this stuff. And it's sort of like they almost make it seem marketing wise like it's going to be the next Ganymede or something, you know, with that strange metallic type thing. It's none of that at all. It's actually the exact opposite of that, but it isn't. It isn't that. And that's kind of where I think the rubber doesn't really meet the road. This is a Nishane for people who do not like Nishane. It's kind of how I would put it. The problem that I would have personally is they are selling 50 mils. Now, to be fair, it is an X-ray, but either way, they're selling 50 mils of this for $250. You know, I mean, it is a little bit, pricey. But the fact that I have 100 mils of Bracken Man, and I just showed Bon Monsieur, and then you add, if you have a big collection like mine and you don't own B612, this may be a little bit redundant if you already have other fougères that fill the hole. I would wear either of these and be just as happy, if not more happy, than wearing B612. And this thing, they're not exactly the same. This has much more clove and spice on the top, which I actually really like. It doesn't have the Cashmeran, I don't believe. But it's not a direct one-for-one comparison, but it's still a niche house doing an interpretation of a classic, you know, vintage, old school fougere. So that's where I think just the Nishane has they're in a tough, they're competing in a very tough market. And this is very, not necessarily bland, but it just doesn't add anything special for me that's going to move me to go, I need to go buy a bottle of this. Not at all. You know, this is kind of one of those where it's like, I'm very glad I got a chance to try it. Very glad I got a chance to do the video for you guys so you can kind of share and hear my thoughts, but not interesting or different enough or anything like that to really move me to go, that's a bottle. Now, if you don't have any of the aromatic fougères already in your collection and you would like one, this could work very well. Or if you just find an amazing price or something, there's absolutely nothing wrong with this. As I said, it would be an amazing dad scent, amazing sort of work scent or something like that, because it's so crisp and clean and professional. You know, that's the feeling. Crisp, clean, professional. So that's my take on B612. If you guys have any experience with it, as always, I would love to hear your thoughts. Go check out Jeff's Instagram channel, which was My Scented World. So thank you for these samples, Jeff. That's very, very kind of you, and I will hopefully be talking about some of these very, very soon. So thanks, guys. Cheers, and I'll catch you next time. Bye-bye.